So I've said this plenty of times that a society without its men is not a society. A society without its men is a wasteland. Men are being blamed for the bad economy. The Speaker Mike Johnson of the House is coming out and lashing out at men for not working, saying that they are responsible for the Medicaid program now skyrocketing, and there just not being enough tax revenue for the government. Yeah, men are actually being blamed for leaving society, and the government, specifically the Republicans and Mike Johnson followers, are demanding men return to society and serve society again. How is this going to affect society going forward in the long term as more men leave the workforce and decide that since they're not getting married or having children and society doesn't like them, they are not going to give their bodies, their lives to society anymore, and instead live simple lives of luxury and comfort away from a reality, a society that doesn't like them? Don't forget to follow us on Rumble. It's linked description of the video. And guys, if you want to learn about crypto, we're here for you. You can go check out Angry's Crypto Academy to learn how to make a full-time living in crypto with courses and guides by visiting Anger's Crypto Academy, link description of the video. We're just going to go ahead and jump right into the article. So because it's we'll go ahead and jump right into the article because it's actually pretty fascinating what we're seeing right here. So, as you can see on the screen right now, the article is actually titled "MAGA Cruelty: Johnson Blasted for Blaming Young Men to Justify GOP's Medicaid Cuts." And this is actually one of many articles that have been published just now. So Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is blaming what he calls young men playing video games instead of working as he defends Republicans' plan to gut Medicaid, slashing what Democrats say is $880 billion from the vital health program that provides medical care to 1 in 5 Americans. So he's basically blaming men not working for needing to cut almost $1 trillion in Medicare, and they're actually talking about a work requirement to collect Medicaid. Medicare is for old people. Medicaid is for people who need help. No one has talked about cutting one benefit in Medicaid to anyone who's duly owed. What we've talked about is returning work requirements. So, for example, you don't have able-bodied young men on a program that's designed for single mothers and the elderly and disabled. Single mothers? Whose side is Mike Johnson really on? Said the speaker, Johnson's own Louisiana district has disproportionately high rates of Americans on the life-saving program. CBS News this week reported Medicaid is a lifeline for people in his district. Johnson blamed what he suggested is a large number of male gamers on Medicaid for draining resources, which is a load of BS. So if you clean that up and shore it up, you save a lot of money, and you return the dignity of work to young men who need to be out working instead of playing video games all day, he declared. This guy is an absolute fool. All it's going to do is result in is a bunch of men being uninsured. He thinks that men will work for in health insurance. No, these men won't work for health insurance. They basically will just not have health insurance, not go to the doctor, and that's pretty much it. They're not going to go and work for health. He's insane. He's absolutely insane. Men are not going to go and work for health insurance. Okay, we have a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in Medicaid. Just one tiny example, the estimate is $51 billion a year in Medicaid lost to fraud. That's unconscionable. The Louisiana GOP lawmakers claimed. Though rather than target professionals who may be bilking the system or other factors, including paperwork errors, Johnson has chosen to repeatedly target what he claims a 29-year-old male sitting on their couches playing video games. The nonpartisan health policy organization KFF, formerly the Kaiser Family Foundation, reported in February that data showed most Medicaid adults are working or face barriers to work. Many Medicaid adults who are working low-wage jobs are employed by small firms in industries that have low employee-sponsored insurance offer rates. So KFF also reports that the vast majority of adult Medicaid recipients under the age of retirement, 65, are already working with no work requirement. The congressional budget office estimates that adding a work requirement would only serve as a barrier to Medicaid participation, and therefore spending would not increase the employment levels for otherwise eligible recipients. In Arkansas, KFF reports implementing Medicaid work requirements resulted in more than 18,000 people losing coverage. Adding work requirements also increases monitoring and implementation costs at the state level. Critics blasted Johnson. Of course, nothing says dignity like ripping healthcare away from poor people based on outdated classist stereotypes, wrote Wall Street investment banker Everasius Odinkazi. Young men on Medicaid aren't playing video games all day. They're often underpaid, overworked, or struggling in a rigged economy. This is just MAGA cruelty dressed up as moral judgment. Annie Schaub of the nonprofit Protect Our Care wrote, "We know that people on Medicaid who are able to work already we know that people on Medicaid who are able to work already do. This will only hurt people and prevent them from getting the health care they deserve, including caregivers who are staying home and caring for family members." So yeah, he's pissed off with he's basically pissed off because men are walking away from society, and he's trying to do what they've always done, which is use men as a scapegoat for pretty much everything bad that's happening in society. Basically, oh, man, we need to cut some bills. We need to basically save some money. Oh, we know what to do. We're just going to go after men. We're going to do what we've always done, and we're going to just crap on men and blame men for for what's happening in society. So it's pretty crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy that what's going on as men basically just say, "Hey, we're done with this society. We're done with this reality." And what they don't understand is that if they do this, it's going to hurt women a lot more than it's going to hurt men, because men are going to survive one way or another. Men will basically just go do some Uber Eats to meet the minimum work requirement, and then go from there. They'll do some Uber Eats, do some, start an online business, whatever, and show that they're doing like minimum, they're bringing in a minimum amount of income. So basically, this whole work requirement is just to prove that you pay taxes. So, and men pay the vast majority of all taxes. Men pay 80% of all taxes. Women make 80% of all consumer purchases. I already told you guys this, that a society without its men is not a society. A society without its men is a wasteland. And the moment that you begin to disrespect your men, you will soon cease to be a society. And that's what's happening all around the world right now. You have all of these countries that have disrespected their men, and now they are beginning to crash and burn, and they are looking to punish men and extract more wealth and resources from men. Like, well, we won't give you health insurance. I mean, here's the thing, it's only going to hurt women more, because it's going to force women who are not able to find jobs to also end up in this situation, unless they do some type of gendered gender discrimination, where they basically say, okay, well, women who are not working can have health insurance, but men can't. That would basically break the law. Don't get me wrong. I could definitely see them trying to do something like that, but it probably wouldn't work for them. So all they're going to do is actually make things worse for women, and make it much more difficult for women to qualify for healthcare. And they're the ones who use the majority of the healthcare system, not men. And it's like women basically are just now, as a result, we're just seeing women trying to rush back to traditionalism, even though they have nothing of value to offer most men today. So this actually came from PC Gamer. This one's from PC Gamer. It says young men are playing video games all day instead of getting jobs because they can mooch off free healthcare, claims congressman. To justify Medicaid cuts, House Speaker Mike Johnson says the healthcare program leads to able-bodied young men playing video games instead of working. Medicaid is a U.S. health insurance program for people with low incomes. It's funded by states and federal government, and like most government programs that help people in some way, it's one of Trump's administration's targets for cuts. Why video games, of course? More specifically, part of the plan is to implement work requirements for Medicaid eligibility. This is currently only a feature of the program in Georgia, and to justify adding this administrative hurdle for patients and states, Republicans are claiming that access to taxpayer funded health care is causing young men to waste all their time playing video games instead of working. This is a lot. I told you guys, the average man, once a man's basic needs and necessities are met, he doesn't have to do anything. Men can live happily in a shoebox at the side of the road. Women can't. And so the government is basically pulling back and using and doing what everyone always does, blaming men for everything. Oh, we have to cut these because young men are not working. We have to do this. We have to do that. The irony is that it's really just giving them enough cover so they can take because it's mostly women on Medicaid. So they're really just using this as cover, blaming men for what they will actually disproportionately affect women. And then of course, it's like, what are women going to do? They can't do anything because basically the state's like, yeah, we're just making these cuts, but it's not going to affect women because you guys are big and strong and you don't need no man, so you can go out there and find a job and survive. This is not going to affect you, ladies. You guys are perfect and special, and you have feminism. You're feminist, so you can woman power, so you can go and make that money. All right, you'll be absolutely fine because most of you ladies are working, right? So you don't have to worry about this. This doesn't affect you. This is for the bad boys. All right, the bad boy club. Guys, they are literally going after modern women with this. They're cutting their access to aid. They're cutting. This is really targeting women. It's absolutely targeting women because, like I said, this is not going to lead to men going back to work. Men will find other ways to survive. They'll use like urgent cares where they pay like a small amount of money and access a smaller network of healthcare systems. There's a bunch of state programs as well for people who are unemployed, and the work requirement to collect Medicare would actually create more problems than anything else because you have to talk about the homeless. Technically speaking, a lot of men can say that they're technically homeless, or they're basically it's very very hard. It's really hard to go after these men because these men could basically say they're homeless, or they're in between jobs, and they've been looking, they can't find anything. If they go after these dudes, they could also say that these men can basically then start going after things like Social Security, disability, which is what quite a few men are doing right now. And of course, men are investing in crypto, doing things like day trading. Guys, the reason why they're doing this is because we're heading for financial ruin right now. All right, the dollar is on the brink of collapse. You can see that happening, and Donald Trump is pushing to he wants to lower the value of the dollar. He wants to weaken the dollar so that it will basically other countries will invest in America, buy American goods, but more so they'll be able to refinance and push inflation higher so that they can refinance. He can refinance America's $36 trillion in debt for a lot less money, which basically means that we may be facing some very seriously hard times. I mean, when have we not been facing hard times? But yeah, so that he can refinance the debt, but it's all going to just hit every single one of us. And the only way to really preserve the value of your wealth is to invest in crypto, because you have to understand that crypto is not tied fundamentally to the United States. It's a global currency, so people all around the world are holding it, meaning that the effect of the American economy does not directly affect crypto. If anything, it makes the value of crypto increase, because as the value of the dollar decreases, the value of crypto goes up, because crypto, believe it or not, does have some tangibility. Even though it's not something physically that you can hold, it is still a tangible asset. It's still a concrete asset that does exist and is limited in quantity, and it has real intrinsic value based on its usage case. So for that reason, by holding crypto, just like previously people held real estate and stocks and so forth, you're able to just wait. As the economy gets worse, your money will grow, and as that's happening, people are going to be jumping into crypto rapidly to get their piece, specifically the boomers. And what there's one thing we know about the boomers, it's that they're greedy, and as their 401ks begin to get wiped out and they have to remove their money into some other assets, they're going to put it in cryptocurrency, guys. You're going to see, because the economy, the financial system is teetering on the edge. ATMs are going to freeze and the banks are going to chain the doors, and your wealth is in jeopardy. So, you need to discover how to safeguard your assets with crypto. And at Angry's Crypto Academy, you'll learn how to buy, sell, trade, and invest in the most secure coins. Plus, you'll discover the dark horse crypto that virtually no one is talking about, which will mint you millionaires in the upcoming bull run. Click the link in the video description below to find out what this crypto is and join the academy today. So let's go, like, we'll jump back into it in just a moment. We're seeing that it's there's so many disparities, there's so much hardship that is now coming, and no one is coming to save anyone. All right, so let's see here. No one has talked about cutting any benefits and Medicaid to anyone who is duly owed. What we've talked about is returning to work, blah 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 blah. For example, you have able-bodied young men on a program that's designed for single mothers and the elderly. Single mothers, they're draining resources from people, said House Speaker Mike Johnson last week. So if you clean that up and shore it up, you save a lot of money and you return the dignity of work to young men, dignity of work, dignity of being an SLAVE. That's why, guys, I tell you, this society absolutely despises us as men. All right. Basically, we have responsibilities without authority, which makes us SLAVEs, while women have privileges without accountability. All right, which makes them privileged. They have power without accountability, which makes them privileged. Okay, dun 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 dun. So you return the dignity of work to young men who need to be out working instead of playing video games all day. Basically, the only reason why men ever struggled, ever went out and started working for society was because of the prospects of having a wife, kid, and children and family. The social contract has been broken, and yet the government wants men to maintain the social contract, even though it broke the social contract. The state broke the social contract. Women broke the social contract. Hence, men have nothing to work for other than survival. And men don't need much to survive. Men can live happily in a shoebox at the side of the road, which is what many are doing. And now they're looking for any way possible to punish these men. Don't be shocked when they start talking about work requirements to play video games. Of course, this will only result in men turning to things like emulation and becoming even more minimalistic and and contributing even less money to the economy. I mean, this is what they did when this is what they did leading up to the fall of the Roman Empire, where they banned men, single men, from going to the Colosseums, public events, and made and punished them by making them run in the roads, and they were shamed and called worse than all of the criminals in all of the Roman Empire. And but these men still would not get married, and basically ended up with a society within 100 years of the children of Chad and Tyrone roaming the streets, who had no military, no man of value was going to have children or actually protect the empire. The empire had no. The empire ran out of money because it had been using all of its spoils to subsidize women. It was operating entirely on SLAVE labor, and men basically gave up on this society because the society broke its social contract. It went from a society where the average man no longer had to work, the average Roman citizen did not have to work, to an empire where everything was now degrading, falling apart. They had no money, they had no military, they had no men. Men had given up, and it basically was just these rulers, still trying to subsidize the women. And then barbarians came along, realized that the emperor had no clothes, had no money, had no soldiers, had no men that were willing to stand and fight for the empire, and as such pillaged the empire, plunged America, right, well, we're heading in that direction, plunged the Roman Empire, which spanned most of Europe, into 1000 years of darkness, where the Catholic Church then ruled over humanity for 1000 years. And uh, and women basically lost their privileged status, and they had to go and work in the fields alongside men. But even though they were working alongside men in the fields, they ended up struggling and suffering much more than men during that dark era. This is that's the history of the Roman Empire, and of course, there's likely more to the story that we don't know. But what we do know is that women really suffered during the Dark Ages, and it happened because of how powerful they became. Because once they introduced no fault divorces in the Roman Empire, these women began divorcing their husbands and running off with gladiators, with Chad and Tyrone. They refused to raise their children and said, let the nannies, let the SLAVEs raise those children. All right. And men, basically, it became a bad deal for men, and men said, yeah, we're not going to have this, we're just going to leave, we're going to abandon society, and the more you punish us, the more minimalist we become. And that's exactly what happened. You could take everything away from men, and men will basically find other ways to entertain them, yeah, entertain themselves. If you strip men of everything, they'll become simply like the monks, and they will go within. They will shut themselves down and look within, where they will have they'll keep next to no possessions whatsoever, very minimal dress, eat one time a day or even one time a week, and they will give up on society. And I've said this before, like, if men were to go down the path of the monks, society as a whole would be absolutely screwed. What they want us to do is to be their SLAVEs and continually serve a society that absolutely despises us and does not like us indefinitely. But they don't understand that, with a society without its men is not a society. A society without its men is a wasteland. And of course, the state does not have a soul. Human beings have souls, but the state doesn't have a soul. The state is only cares about getting access to as much wealth and resources as it possibly can from men to continue subsidizing itself and keep it going. But it's, guys, it's catching up. It's bad karma, and women are the ones who are going to be affected the most in all of this, because there's not going to be any money to subsidize them going forward, and men are no longer going to subsidize them. There's going to be no more marriage for modern women, so women are going to find themselves in the coming decade in extraordinary hard situations. They said they would rather the bear, but now they're going. Now you see them crying on social media that they don't want to go hang out with Yogi and Boo Boo, but it's just not happening. So anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts regarding all of this. Men are being blamed for the bad economy, but honestly, I don't think most men care. That's only going to push them further into minimalism. Let me know your thoughts and we'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.